I was able to find a little bit of a shortcut. This designer stitch is just strictly for cosmetic purposes. It's not holding anything. It actually measures right to the bottom of the horsehair braid. So it's going to save me a little bit of time on measuring, because I did start off just measuring it all. I was going to pull it up, but then I realized once it was folded, this braid went right to the bottom of this thread. So saved me some steps on having to mark it. So right now it's just a matter of getting it all lined up and make sure that I have all my fabrics laying smooth and flat against the horsehair braid. So what's going to end up happening is I'm going to end up going over that exact same stitching right there, or right beside it. Just depends on how thick it's going to end up being, because I don't want it to look like like a pair of blue jeans, where it's real thick at the bottom. This is a prom gown. This isn't, something that needs to look like it's homemade. So I'm just going to keep pinning this all in place. I'm gathering together once I've determined where I'm going to be placing the fabric and sewing it down, and then I'm putting the pin all the way through the fabric and the horsehair braid. Now you gotta remember, this gown is cut in a circular cut, and it's going to be wider at the bottom than what it is going towards the top. So that means you're going to have a lot of fabric that you're going to have to ease into the top as you're moving up. So what I'm going to end up having to do is quite a bit of handwork on this. If I was not trying to save this hem to where later it could be altered again, I would not have to do this, but it's requiring a little bit more work on my part, a little bit more creativity, figuring it out, ingenuity, what have you, to make this the way that the client has requested it. She's wearing a pair of really tall, spiky heels with this, and later she says she knows she's going to be going barefooted later, and she doesn't want to ruin the bottom of the gown. So I will also be putting in a bustle all the way around this gown so that she can lift it to whatever length that she's wanting. So I'm really not too concerned a whole lot about the perfection of the measurement on the bottom of this hem at this stage, because she's going to have full control of that. A lot of times what ends up happening, I find that whenever I try to accommodate a client and do something I know is going to take way more time than what most of the time I'm getting paid for, but way much more time than what I even have. A lot of times I just won't be able to try to save the gown to where they can let it out later, and I'll just have to let the client know it just was not possible. So far, this gown looks like it is going to be possible, though. See how it's starting to twist here on the bottom, the fabrics? That's because you have all this width on the bottom trying to bring it up into a smaller area. But that's not going to be seen because all of that is going to be tucked under. But if it does continue to keep twisting, it quite possibly will affect the way the gown's going to lay. Let me get pinned up probably a good halfway, and then I'm going to roll that fabric under and see if that's going to be the case. If that is the case here, then this is going to be an alteration. It cannot be saved for a later time for the client to re-alter it again by letting it back out to its original dimensions. So let's see. Let me get it all pinned in place. This is why it's so valuable to pin in place. Don't just cut and start sewing, especially when you're dealing with these stretchy, delicate fabrics like this. You're going to see every bit of your marks, the movements. It's going to distort your fabrics. It's going to twist. It's important to take these steps. It takes more time, yes, but once you actually have it figured out what is going to be best for retaining the gown's appearance of the designer, keeping that design, then once you have it figured out, then the rest of it moves fast. This is the part that's the most time consuming. I have a bent needle, so I don't like using bent needles, so this goes in the trash. If I was working using cottons and denims and things, yeah, I wouldn't mind so much. But because of the type of work that I do the majority of the time, the bent needles, they're not good for the chiffons and the satins, and especially a snag needle. That's really got to go. I have no place for a snag needle or even a dull needle. It just, it ruins the integrity of the gown with just one little snag. And I've yet to figure out any tricks over the years that will undo snags in chiffons and satins. So if you have any ideas and tricks how to correct that, please leave me something in the comments box. I'll be glad to give it a try. Put it on video, and I'll acknowledge that you were the one that gave me the idea to try. Alright, I'm going through all the layers all the way through the horsehair braiding. On this particular gown, I had this little thread, this designer's thread. It's just strictly cosmetic. It has nothing that it's holding anything onto, strictly cosmetic. So it played to my benefit because it's right at the very bottom of where my measurement needs to be. So instead of marking and measuring, I'm using it as my measuring line. I'm pulling out the fabric, making sure that I'm not getting it doubled up inside there. Making sure it's smoothed out underneath, because that is the part that's going to be sewn on, and whatever I sew down, it's going to be trapped in between those layers, and I don't want that to happen. So just double checking and double checking. Looks like the twist that was going on in the bottom of the skirt has worked itself out. Not seeing it good yet, but once I get this stretched out, I'll be able to see it better. Alright, probably 1 or 2 more pins should be sufficient enough for me to fold this excess back under and see how the dress is going to lay. Okay. See how it's twisting? That's the very bottom. That's the extra fabric. That's not what's going to be seen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold that under and see if you're going to be able to see it once the gown is laying down. Once it's just hanging, you know, like normal. So what I'm going to do for this, because this piece that I'm folding up and putting underneath here, that part, I do not want it attached to this top fashion piece that you're going to see. So I'm going to attach it only to the horsehair braid. Let's see what happens. This looks like this is going to be one of those alterations that can't be saved. See how it's twisting? It's all the extra fabric. And you definitely will see that underneath the gown. Let's give it a try. Let's see. Maybe I'm wrong. Alright, I'm only going through the horsehair. I'm not going through to the other side. Alright, do the same here. I'm stretching it. I'm only going through the fabric here to the horsehair. I'm not going through the front. Again, if you didn't catch this in the beginning, this is not normally how you would do an alteration for this type hem. The reason why it's being done this way is the client has asked that I retain the gown to where she can let it be altered at a later time to let it out. So I'm trying my best not to cut any fabric and just trick, fold, manipulate the fabric to where it's not going to be seen on the other side, but yet she will later be able to let this out for alteration. See how it's twisting and folding? That's because it was wider at the bottom than what it was at the top. So I'm trying to ease in this fabric and see. But again, I will not know if this works until I drop this gown to see if it's going to show. Because if it shows, then we're not going to be able to save her fabric for a later alteration. We're going to have to do the alteration as it needs to be. See the problem I'm running into right here? I'm here at the edge of the hem. Well, I was able to stretch it around. Let's see how it's going to look. Going through the fabric and the horsehair only, not going through to the other side. Not too sure about how this is going to work. Never did an alteration like this where they wanted to keep the hem with a horsehair braid. I've done it with other hems that did not have horsehair braids. But this is the first for a gown that has a horse braid hem. So let's see. I'm not too sure this is going to work because look, when she kicks her feet up, when she's walking or when she crosses her legs, you're going to see all of that. So now it becomes a question for me of the integrity of my work. Do I want to retain that? Or do I want to accommodate the client and risk a reputation at my type of work? Because when people see this, they're not going to know that the seamstress is trying to accommodate the client and not cut the fabric and the excess off at the client's request. They're just going to see a seamstress doing a homemade job that just didn't know what to do. And see how badly this is twisted? This isn't going to work. I don't know about your other seamstress out there, but I really don't want to put a reputation out like that of myself for a hem like this. Let's see. Just out of curiosity. I want to see how it would look once it's laying free. Let's see. It making, well, no, you see how it's kicking up in the corners? Yeah, this alteration is not going to be able to be done the way that the client is asking. So at this stage, because I was able to pin it all, test it out, pretend the needles were needle and thread, because I was able to do this, I now know 100% how I need to do this alteration. And I also know that I will not be able to save the bottom of this hem for this client to have a gown to alter at a later time, letting it back out. So I don't want to embarrass the client by her kicking her feet up when she's dancing, when she's walking, or when she crosses her legs, and somebody see her gown looking like this. That's going to be embarrassing to her, and it's also going to be embarrassing to me because people are not going to understand the fullness of why the hem would be looking like this. And so I'm making the decision not to do this gown like this. I will be doing it the original way that it's supposed to be done, and let the client know that it was not possible to save the excess fabric for her in doing a later alteration. So I'll take out all these pins, and then I will have to mark.